Take my eyes open to force reality. Why can't you just let me eat my weight in glee? Hush.
Hello, World Ablaze listeners. Welcome to episode 71. I'm recording on this day, Sunday, April 6th, 2025. I tell you the date of this recording because it's important. Because as of last night, or early morning, depending on your time zone in the world, Russia launched a large-scale attack on Ukraine. They have launched various missiles against Ukraine on 6 territories, which includes their capital, Kyiv. And to this day, as of this recording, so far, I've been monitoring social media, legacy media outlets, etc., and there hasn't been one peep from any European nation, not that I have seen yet, and especially of note, nothing from the UK or from France, the two most critical nations against the USA and Trump for allegedly not doing enough in the fight for Ukraine against Russia in this conflict. Yet today, thus far, nothing from Europe, nothing from UK, nothing from France. Why is this important? Because in all their criticism about US involvement and about Trump's actions and stance on the Ukraine war as of late, they have stated, both Starmer and Macron have stated that they are ready to send troops, boots on the ground, in support of Ukraine, especially if anything escalates. Not that long ago, France was going on a European tour. President Emmanuel Macron has been doing everything he can to rally Europe against Russia. And much of that messaging included not just sending weaponry, but actually putting boots on the ground in Ukraine on the front lines to fight against Russia. Yet today, after last night's attack, the night before today's recording, which is April 6, 2025, today there hasn't been one word, not one statement of condolences, nothing. The only person who said anything today, and very well should say anything because they were just attacked, has been President Vladimir Zelensky, president of the Ukraine. And of course he would make a statement. He was just bombed. Missiles were just sent against his country. 6 regions, including his capital. And what makes this attack more egregious is not that Russia just brokered ceasefire, a ceasefire that was meant to let each side get their thoughts together and come together to broker a peace deal, but that Russia broke this ceasefire agreement by targeting civilians, not military targets, but civilians, indiscriminately. We're talking cities populated by civilians, houses destroyed, high-rises destroyed, downtown areas destroyed, because Putin is a liar. Putin doesn't care. Putin wants to take over control and own Ukraine. Because in Putin's eyes, it has always been part of Russia. Putin has always made it very clear that he wants to reunite old glory, that being the old USSR. And Ukraine is part of his plan. But to get back to France and the UK, for being so critical of the US, and especially after last night's attack, what exactly are you doing? What are you doing to thwart Russia's efforts? The answer being exactly the answer that I have given many times, which is absolutely nothing. It's all huff and puff, you see. It's all about getting pats on the back, getting confirmed as a good person, a good leader, a good country. And I am mainly talking about UK and France since they are the most critical and arguably maybe the most powerful European nations. but yet have done nothing. Absolutely nothing. For all their criticism, they haven't made one statement. I haven't seen any troops being sent anywhere, but they were anxious to broker a deal with Ukraine. In fact, if you listen to this show regularly, you know that I already reported that the UK signed a 100-year deal to support Ukraine. They did so on January 26th of 2025, well before the heated and contested argument between Zelensky, President Trump, and JD Vance, which was publicized live on a broadcast. Long before that, the UK already signed and brokered a deal, part of which included mineral rights, developing their economy using the British banking system and British trade partners. Something that went unreported for whatever reason, yet the United States was criticized and called the bad guy, the threat to democracy, for trying to do the same or similar thing with Ukraine, but instead offering the Ukraine much more money and profit off of the processed minerals, which would also include a presence of U.S. personnel on Ukrainian soil. But maybe I'm just digressing. And if you want to know more about that, all you have to do is go to the UK's government website and just do a search for this 100-year deal, and you will find it. It'll pop right up. It's right there. So after last night's attack, here's a statement made by Volodymyr Zelensky. And this has been reported in Reuters, and I'm reading this directly from his social media account on X. Now, I'm going to admit I'm horrible at pronouncing the names of most of these regions, but just be assured there was 6 regions, which also included Kyiv. So I'm going to just skip the very first part of this because I don't want to do a disservice to Ukraine and to these regions that were attacked. But it goes on to read that the number of air attacks is increasing. This is how Russia reveals its true intentions. To continue the terror for as long as the world allows it, over the past week, they launched more than 1,460 guided aerial bombs, nearly 670 attack drones, and over 30 missiles of various types against Ukrainian cities and villages against our people. More than 20 of them took place just last night. Every strike targets our people, our children. They are waging war against children playing on playgrounds. My condolences to all the families and loved ones of the victims. I thank all of our services who are helping and saving Ukrainians. These attacks are Putin's response to all international diplomatic efforts. Each of our partners, the United States, all of Europe, the entire world has seen that Russia intends to continue the war and the killing. That is why there could be no easing of pressure. All efforts must be aimed at guaranteeing security and bringing peace closer. Now, again, thus far, as of this recording, there hasn't been a single response from a European nation. Now, Reuters has also reported on this. Actually, many news outlets have reported about this attack. And Poland remains on high alert as their borders are right there and extremely close to these attacks. In fact, they've deployed their air force just in case they had to retaliate or even protect themselves. But thus far, the NATO nation remains on alert. Now, while President Emmanuel Macron of France has stated many times that he's willing to send troops to help Ukraine, putting actual troops on the ground in Ukraine on the front lines to fight against Russia, he has done nothing thus far. Nothing. And again, hasn't made one statement in regard to this attack on Ukraine that just happened last night. And also, before this, PM Keir Starmer has done the same. Prime Minister of Britain, or the UK, has said the same thing. In fact, I got a little clip of him saying just as much. Listen to this.
The UK is prepared to back this with boots on the ground and planes in the air, together with others. Europe must do the heavy lifting.
Okay, so there you go. Even Prime Minister Starmer is saying the UK and Europe, meaning his European allies, which include France and everyone else part of this little coalition right now that is anti-America and wants to come together to do the heavy lifting in defense of Ukraine to push back on Russia. Even he admits they can't do it without the support of the U.S. Funny how they all stand strong and are critical of the United States for not stepping in or apparently doing enough, but yet they themselves will admit that they can't even do it on their own either.
But to support peace in our continent and to succeed, this effort must have strong US backing.
So there you have it. So the reality is, protecting Ukraine, pushing back on Russia, is not going to happen unless everybody's on the same page and we all get involved. So the question is, at this point, as much as Trump wants to broker a peace deal, which Putin is obviously not willing to engage in, not even willing to consider, because if he did, why would he even break the ceasefire? Putin does not care about peace. Putin cares about reclaiming Ukraine. Putin cares about pressing on past Ukraine and resurrecting the old USSR, which has always been his dream. And he stated this many times in the past. So is it now time for the US to step up? Is it time for us to get involved, to step in? And what does that look like? Do we need to send troops, or do we need to resupply Ukraine with advanced weaponry so that they even have a chance against Russia? Now, Russia themselves are in trouble financially. They can't afford to keep this war going. There are many out there who have assessed that Russia's economy is now in a state of, well, a wartime economy. That without this war, they can't necessarily stop the war, for example, because then their economy will just crash. Because it's the only thing keeping it going. So how do we end this war if we're not going to use troops, if we're not going to use a continuous supply of weapons to Ukraine? It would have to be economically, financially. Are sanctions enough? No, because sanctions have proven to do nothing. People who want to do business with Russia, and Russia in general, who wants to sell their goods or find ways to make money, will find a way. Hence why BRICS was even started to begin with. It was a way for Russia to work around sanctions. And so there's always a way. Russia will find a way to continue to carry out its campaign and its efforts. They just don't care. They're going to find a way. But the EU can help out even more. One of the biggest exports that Russia has is natural gas. And so Europe committed not too long ago to cutting this off. They're like, look, we're going to hit them where it hurts. We're going to hit Russia's wallet. We're no longer going to buy their gas. But the issue with that is the European nations have not been very strategic in putting together a concise plan, which all European nations will agree on and stick to. While some nations have cut out the purchase of gas altogether from Russia, Poland being one of those nations, others have not. Others have not weaned themselves off. And from a report that I got from Bruegel, I believe it's pronounced Bruegel, it is spelled Bruegel. They actually touch on this topic. And here's the state of play. I'm going to read a small snippet of this report, but they go on to say that in 2021, Russia supplied the EU with 157 billion cubic meters, or BCM, of gas, about half of the EU's gas imports. Again, I'm going to say that again. Half of the EU's gas imports came from Russia. They go on to state that the EU imported most Russian gas via 4 pipelines, which was Nord Stream 1, Ukrainian gas transit, Yamal and Turkstream, and liquefied natural gas shipments. So by 2024, Russian gas imports, they had fallen to 54 billion cubic meters, or BCMs, which accounted for 18% of the EU gas imports. But they also go on to state that this drop was primarily driven by Russian supply cuts, rather than actions that were actually taken by EU countries. So the EU is not doing them any favors, or themselves any favors, by continuing to do business with Russia, by continuing to give them money to bolster their economy by buying gas from Russia. They continue to do so. And while there was a little bit of a dip, at the end of 2024, gas imports and purchases from Russia into the EU actually went up. So if the goal is to find a non-military solution or to not commit to a military solution and pushing Russia back and getting them to abandon their efforts against Ukraine, then the EU needs to be united and completely cutting off Russia. Stop purchasing from them. Stop giving them money in any way. Now, Russia may find other areas and other countries to do business with, namely Iran, for example, but Europe themselves buys a lot of gas, a lot of natural resources from Russia. And at this point, if they're truly serious and truly committed, and yet not committed enough to actually send troops as they say they would, all through last year, by the way, through 2024, there's been whispers from the UK and from France, etc., that, oh, we're ready to send troops. We're ready to commit. We're ready to stand ground with Ukraine against Russia, yet nothing. Even after last night's attack, nothing. Not a peep, nothing. So you have no power. You are liars. You're not ready to do what it takes to push back against Russia. Why? Because the reality is nobody wants a World War III event. And yes, that is a real world scenario that we're facing. One of the reasons President Trump has been apprehensive in getting too involved, because he knows that if America commits boots on the ground, that the retaliation, not from Russia necessarily, but also China, Iran, North Korea, all the bad actors that support Russia and back Russia will get involved. Now, the only thing that would happen is if we got involved, if we were the first people to get in there and actually push back on Russia, maybe, possibly the UK and France would both actually grow enough balls to get involved, especially for something that is knocking on their back door. We're talking a major aggressor against democracy, as they say, right there in their own backyard that they fail to do anything about. Because, as Starmer said earlier in that video clip I played, they absolutely need the backing of the United States of America to be effective. Because they know that they can't stand on their own. So, my message to Europe is stop pandering. Stop shaking hands, kissing babies, and looking to get reassured that you're the good guys in this whole thing. That you're the good guys against the big bad Russian aggression. Because you're not. You're doing nothing. It's going to take all of us to push back on Russia. And right now, the only thing keeping any of us getting involved, if we're being honest, is a nuclear retaliation from Russia. And the fact that if we step foot into this conflict, we now face the aggression and the large military might of China. And of course, now we have Iran to deal with, and we have North Korea to deal with, and we have just stepped into a massive World War III event. So the only thing we can do to stay united and to exert any pressure on Russia is to just bleed them dry. We need to stand together, all nations. Look, sanctions don't mean a damn thing. It's been proven. Russia always finds a way. Iran finds a way. Every bad actor that is against democracy finds a way. They find a way to get money. But we need to stand firm. Sanctions aren't enough. Literally stop buying from Russia. Literally stop giving them money for anything. That's the only thing that's going to end this war if we're not committed to get involved militarily. And thus far, nobody really is committed. Now, getting back over to the U.S., a big event happened, a big event that was mobilized by the Hands Off 2025 organization, which was a massive protest that was vehemently against Elon Musk and Donald Trump. While I do tip my hat to the organizers for bringing so many people together. The reports as to how many people attended, how many different protests, etc., are yet to be verified. In fact, many news outlets have different numbers. None of them can seem to align on how many people or exactly how many different protests there were. CNN, for example, they report that there were nearly 600,000 people who signed up to attend the events, some of which took place in major cities like London, Paris, according to Indivisible, which was another outlet or reporting agency. One of the organizations leading the movement in collaboration with a nationwide coalition that includes civil rights organizations, veterans, women's rights groups, labor unions, and LGBTQ plus advocates. But CNN does go on to say that they have not been able to independently verify how many people attended Saturday's demonstration, but hands-off organizers themselves say that millions, and of course they report this in parentheses, millions of people turned up from coast to coast. The organizers went on to say, according to CNN, that they have 3 demands: an end to the billionaire takeover and rampant corruption of the Trump administration, an end to slashing federal funds for Medicaid, Social Security, and other programs working people rely on, and an end to attacks on immigrants, trans people, and other communities. So basically, they're just against everything Trump's against, and apparently Trump is attacking everybody. All right. But that's according to CNN. Now, it's important I read that last section here where they had the 3 demands because there's conflicting reports on why they were organizing. Let me go on to the AP. Now, the AP, their report is that there were crowds of people angry about the way President Donald Trump is running the country. They marched and rallied in scores of American cities Saturday in the biggest day of demonstrations yet by an opposition movement, trying to regain its momentum after the shock of the Republicans' first week in office. The so-called hands-off demonstrations were organized for more than, now listen to this number, more than 1,200 locations in all 50 states by more than 150 groups, which they go on to say exactly what CNN said here, including civil rights organizations, labor unions, LGBTQ plus advocates, veterans, and elections activists. The rallies appeared peaceful with no immediate reports. Now, the AP reports it was across 1,200 locations. CNN reports here that it was over 1,400 different locations. Conflicting numbers. CNN reports nearly 600,000 people signed up. Reports from other outlets say it was 500,000. Some say it was 400,000. And of course, social media, everyone's social media, they are the news now. They all say that millions showed up to attend. Millions. Some say hundreds of thousands. Some say tens of thousands. Others say millions. So there are conflicting reports as to how many. But regardless, we have to agree on this. We can't deny that it was a large number. It was a large number of people. Now, was it impactful? Maybe. It was all mostly in blue cities. There was a sprinkling of protests within primarily red districts, red counties across blue states, which goes on to show that this was primarily a party and a protest basically for their own people. They're Democrats and people who consider themselves liberal or on the left. They weren't really winning hearts and minds, but still, you have to pay attention. You have to give credit where credit is due. Their voice was heard, and they made a statement. But why they are protesting, according to the Hands Off 2025 organization website themselves, and of course, as it has been reported by CNN and many other outlets, has more to do with them. And again, I'll read straight from the Hands Off 2025 organization website. They're upset about the dismantling of Social Security and Medicare, the Trump administration allegedly handing trillions to billionaires, gutting protections for working people, assaulting communities and their rights. And they're saying that they feel they're targeting veterans, kids, seniors, farmers, immigrants, transgender people, and political opponents. And they won't stop just there. So this is what they are protesting about. But somehow, the bigger leftist legacy media, those that still have news outlets that are on broadcast television, state otherwise. Now, here's a report from CBS News, this one out of CBS News New York, but I've already seen other CBS News outlets and other areas that all parrot the same exact message. And here's that.
But on Saturday, crowds across the country gathered to push back on Trump's policies. Bradley Blackburn joining us now live here in studio with the latest. Bradley.
Elaine, Doug, tariffs and plunging 401ks were major topics at those rallies yesterday. One interesting note this morning, Elon Musk is making headlines saying that he hopes the U.S. and Europe will form a zero tariff free trade zone. But that's not the reality right now, and President Trump is standing firm.
From California to Colorado, in Chicago and New York City, the crowds at hands-off rallies had countless messages, but one shared mission: to protest the policies of President Trump.
It hurts a lot to watch what's happening to the country.
Americans around the country are out on the streets saying, no way.
Investors are bracing for the week ahead after stocks plummeted last week. President Trump's 10% tariffs are now in effect, with higher reciprocal tariffs set to switch on this week. Cameras caught a glimpse of President Trump as he left his Florida golf club Saturday. But in a post on Truth Social, the president called the changes an economic revolution and told Americans to hang tough.
Their tariffs are not only imbecilic, they're illegal, they're unconstitutional, and we're going to turn this around.
Okay, so CBS News reports that the protests are primarily about tariffs. But they also, in the same report, say that there were many messages, mixed messages. There wasn't really one singular message. I think people were just protesting to protest at this point. Maybe they're just upset. They've just always hated Donald Trump, possibly, maybe. I don't know. But regardless, that last statement there that you heard about Trump's being illegal and unconstitutional is complete bullshit. They're not illegal. Trump is literally implementing reciprocal tariffs, which have a minimum tariff amount or percentage of 10%. That's exactly what he's doing. And Elon Musk's statement that they said here in this report, this news report, where they stated that Elon Musk said he's looking for a zero tariff open market or free market. They go on to say, well, that's not the reality because of Trump. Well, not entirely true. Trump is implementing tariffs where countries are putting tariffs on American goods. Yes, it's going to hurt. This is the correction. Is it an overcorrection? Maybe. I don't see it that way. I think this is long overdue. The markets will correct themselves. As far as the stock market crashing, we've seen many graphs come out on this alleged report of how bad it is. And according to most stock market analysts and those that report on these matters, we have basically returned to the numbers back in August, from what I understand. So, is it really that bad? Is it that horrible? Is it scary? Yes, it is scary because there's a big unknown. Now, while the Dow Jones has reportedly fell by over 1,500 points, the 52-week low of the Dow Jones was at 37,611. And as of close of markets previously, we were at 38,314.86. So, this really does look like more of a correction. It looks like we're still within range. Now, both Charles Schwab and Merrill Lynch have released statements or reports that touch on what's going on, what has been going on over the last month or so. And I'm going to read from the report by Charles Schwab here. And they're labeling all this as a market correction. And they ask the question, well, what is a correction? And they go on to explain it this way. They say there's no universally accepted definition of a correction, but most people consider a correction to have occurred when a major stock index, such as the S&P 500 index or Dow Jones Industrial Average, declines by more than 10%, but less than 20%. That would be a bear market, but more on that below. From its most recent peak, it's called a correction because historically the drop often corrects and returns prices to their longer-term trend. So, do corrections mark the start of a bear market? It goes on to say that nobody can predict with any degree of certainty whether a correction will reverse or turn into a bear market. That is, periods when the market is down by 20% or more. And if it's any consolation, historically, most corrections haven't become bear markets. There have been 27 market corrections since November 1974, including the current one we're in now, and only 6 of them became bear markets, which began in 1980, 1987, 2000, 2007, and 2020. So since 1974, according to Schwab, only 6 market corrections have become bear markets. And of course, I'm referring to 1980, 87, 2000, 2007, and 2020. So right now, are we in danger of going into a bear market? According to all data, the way everything's being reported and by the numbers, we might be. We very well could be. But as of now, this is still being labeled or treated as a correction. And many analysts have come out to say just that this is just the market's correcting himself after being, spun out of control for so long, and that these things do happen. But still, should we be cautious? Absolutely. Should we have concern? Sure. And one of my concerns would absolutely be my investment in the stock market. Anybody's concerns would be their investment in the stock market. But let's not fool ourselves here. Investing in stocks is a gamble regardless, and there's no guarantee of getting a return on your investment. But when you're considering your retirement account, your 401ks, you're invested in various other mutual funds, for example, or index funds, and everything is tanking, well, then that's where there is a cause for concern. A lot of people reporting that they lost money in their 401k. But again, this at the moment looks like a market correction. So I'm not an expert when it comes to stock market. I am just reading the reports and reviewing the data that's been presented. So if you have any major concern, see your financial analyst, your broker, whoever, and make the right choice for yourself. But as a country, as the United States of America, as a whole, are we ready to throw in the towel and admit defeat? No. Listen, this is part of what caused the Great Depression. And I'm not going to compare this to the Great Depression as so many people on the left and leftist media has been trying to do, because it's not the same. We're not in the same era. But the panic and concern did cause the Great Depression. The panic and concern when it came to the markets, especially that famous market crash in 1929, fueled the fire of fear and uncertainty with investors, with people in the markets in general. And so what did they do? They ran to the banks. They ran to the banks to get all their cash out. And when they did that, they bled the banks dry. The banks all became insolvent. And that is what caused the Great Depression. We're not there. I doubt that we are going to be there. This is a completely different time. What we're seeing now is a correction. And so hold fast, have faith. Things are going to get better, just as they did in 2000, 2007, and even 2020. So hold fast, stop panicking. Everything's going to be okay. But by all means, consult your financial analyst, your financial professional who can give you, more concise advice and what moves you want to make and help you make those informed decisions. I am just comparing data. I'm just comparing reports, and I am not trying to tell you what to do with your money. I just want to make that very clear. So do your own due diligence in the situation. But I'm just saying that I don't believe it's quite yet time to panic. We're just not there yet. Now, getting back to the hands-off protests. Again, the hands-off 2025 protest is significant. It was a large gathering across America and even in other cities abroad that wanted to pitch in and support this protest. But there are also reports, as I said, mixed messages, unverified numbers, etc. But there were reports of people literally being seen bust in. So I don't know if the organizers, they had like a large list of people that signed on and they were going to go ahead and facilitate transportation for these individuals so that they can all just come in together. Or this was just organized in a way to make it look like in every area there were a ton of people. Like, is this similar to what Kamala Harris got caught doing with her rallies? Or were these people protesting in, I don't know, let's say one city for X amount of hours, getting on the bus, and then going to the next city for X amount of hours, getting on the bus and going to the next one. Was this what was really going on? Is this what made every protest look like there were larger than normal amounts of people? I've talked to some individuals in different cities. They're reporting that there were over 100,000 protesters in New York, for example. Others I know say, well, it wasn't really that much. I mean, they were kind of confined to like this one street or, this block. Same thing that I heard happen in Chicago when I talked to Aaron, the host of I Had to Say It, earlier today. He said the same thing. He goes, it wasn't anything out of the ordinary. It was, pretty much confined to the same normal areas where they'll, usually do their gatherings for their protests. It wasn't anything that was bigger than usual. But what is significant was that they organized it all on the same day, around the same time across the entire country. And you got to tip your hat to them. They're definitely trying to make their voices heard, but the issue is the messaging is not concise. There isn't a clear, defined message that they want to reach the White House. Other than, we don't like you, Trump, and we don't like Elon. And that's pretty much it. That's pretty much it. And you got legacy media trying to say it's about tariffs. You have the organizers saying it's really more about being mistreated and, their rights being taken away. So I'm not really sure what you're protesting, other than I can say that they're coming together because they just hate Donald Trump and Elon Musk. Now, staying on the topic of protests. Now, while I tip my hat to the hands-off organization for, bringing people together to voice their opinions, and they did so in basically a peaceful way, hats off to them for that, but still, the messaging is very mixed. The reports on the numbers and how many supported, we still can't get a clear answer. Regardless, they made a statement. But let's address the Tesla protests. The protests by leftists, by Democrats, who disagree with a man who, by all means, by definition, is a liberal Democrat. We're talking about Elon Musk. And these people feel that because they personally feel slighted for the fact that the organization, Doge, in which was appointed, like Trump appointed him to do the job for only 2 years, by the way. And, 2026, he's done. In fact, Trump has actually stated on more than one occasion that he may even punch his ticket earlier because he's already uncovered enough waste, enough fraud. But even then, everyone could just wait this out, see what happens. But no. They will choose. They, the left, the Democrats, they choose to protest Elon by protesting the product, Tesla, a product which many people buy, regardless of political affiliation. There are both leftists and conservatives and, libertarians and independents that buy this vehicle because they believe in what the electric vehicle can offer. They like the technology and maybe they buy into, hey, I want to maybe not hurt the environment. Like, this is a good thing. So I'm going to invest in this vehicle. But yet the left is going out of their way to literally deface buildings, harass people who buy them on dealer lots, break people's windows, key their cars, firebomb their cars. All violence portrayed by those on the left who always claim to be tolerant and have a view of being inclusive and accepting. It's fucking ridiculous. It's laughable. It's crazy that they're going to go out of their way to damage another person's property because they think that hurts Elon Musk, when they're hurting the people who invested their hard-earned dollars into buying a product that literally gets them around, that maybe gets them to work, that helps them drop their kids off, take their kids to practice, go shopping for groceries and basic necessities, maybe even just get to the damn medical appointments that they need to keep so they can stay alive. Who knows? But still, here we are. And we got these rebels without a real cause, let's just be honest, because it makes absolutely no sense. And so I'm going to play a few clips. I'm not going to dive too deep into my opinion on this. I mean, it's pretty clear that I think this is idiotic. And they're not making any real statement. They're not winning any hearts and minds at all. Just as I don't think the hands-off 2025 protests really won any hearts and minds over, other than those who are already in the club. But here we go. Look, this first video, you're going to hear music. There's no talking, but I'm going to narrate this. And what you're hearing music to which protesters have organized and coordinated a line dance to. They're literally line dancing, holding signs in front of a Tesla factory, I believe, or dealership. And these signs are double-sided with different sayings. So they can just like flip it and flop it depending on what message they're supporting, on whichever particular day. But that's what you were hearing. What you couldn't see is a literal line dance. I found it insanely funny. And I posted it on my Facebook, on my threads, on X. Got a decent response. And look, you can't get any more idiotic than that. You really can't. From the party that brought you feelings and love who you want to love, they also bring you line dancing to change hearts and minds. But let's move on to the other actions. So there are idiots out there who believe that by scratching someone's car, keying it, and causing damage to it in a parking lot, that they're doing something good. These brainwashed people who are so easily swayed and manipulated believe that they are doing good by their team. Party, whatever. So they support the blue team, great, whatever. But destroying and defacing a person's property, and what they fail to realize, which I don't understand how they don't realize this because it's pretty public knowledge. These Teslas have cameras, 360-degree views. And since all this has been happening, I believe some software update or something was pushed to the cars. You can fact check me on this, but when they're parked and not in use, they're now kind of in like, I believe it's called like a security mode or whatever, to where now they're just constantly monitoring. And I don't know if it's based on motion or whatever it is, but these actions are recorded, and they're recorded and stored to a cloud server, which you can access, which now has become evidence against the perpetrators, the people who committed the crime, who defaced the property. I'm going to play a few videos. Just hear these out, make your own opinions, pass your own judgment. But here's the first clip.
See, this man, now identified as 62-year-old David Moeller, keyed this Tesla at Santan Village Shopping Mall in mid-March. The owner, Sean Genesian, noticed the damage first, then went back and watched his vehicle's recording system. Sean reached out to Gilbert police, who arrested Moeller using his video and surrounding surveillance videos of nearby businesses. We asked for Moeller's mugshot and have still not received it. Sean has no idea who this man is and is understandably very angry about the situation.
Okay, so there's one idiot who just got caught. And listen, we're talking about someone who's on the back end of their life. I'm not trying to be morbid here, but this is an adult, by all means, a grown man who decided that it was a good idea. Probably a white-collar guy. Could have even just been a blue-collar guy, but probably dedicated himself to working hard, earning money, paying the bills. If you look at the video, by all means, he looks like a normal, everyday guy, like an average guy, right? Nothing extraordinary, but an average guy, someone who pays her dues. Yet, somehow was motivated, coerced enough by the messaging of big media and leftist propaganda that he would commit this crime, a crime which will land him in jail. And the video clearly, I mean, you can see his face, what he's wearing. He's clearly identified. And so now he's just committed a crime, which he probably never would have done if not for his total buy-in to the team that he's, raising his pom-poms for. Here's another video. This one's good. So there's another guy wearing a shirt with American flag and an eagle, USA jacket, the whole deal. And maybe this guy's a conservative who thinks he's doing the right thing. He might be a never Trumper. He might be someone who doesn't agree with the left, but, isn't a far right guy, but just doesn't agree with things. So I don't know this man's motivation, but listen to this video. This guy gets confronted and he tries to act like he doesn't know what's happening, but check this one out.
Did you just key a Tesla the other day?
What?
You're on video. Yeah. This is the guy. You just keyed a Tesla. You got a video online. I just saw it. It's all over the fucking face. The media. Yes, you did. You keyed a Tesla in a parking lot somewhere around here. What do you got to say about that?
I didn't do that.
Gotta love the clown music. So right now what's going on is they're showing the video of him getting out of his Hyundai, by the way, a South Korean car, walking up to the car next to him that he parked, right in his slot next to him, which is a Tesla. So here he is. He's walking up and down next to the car, kind of like assessing the situation. Like, I don't know, should I do this? Is it clear? Can I? Car passes by. He turns the other way like, hey, nothing's happening. Then he goes to the passenger side door and...
You're on video. I said,
there you go.
I plainly saw you doing it. You pulled up right next to it and then you keyed it. You want to bet?
Whatever.
And there you go. No answer, right? No answer, no accountability. I guess, whatever. Listen, this is the mentality we're dealing with. The people who oppose America first, people who oppose Donald Trump by all means. And look, I'll call Donald Trump out. I question some of the things he's doing now. If you listen to the show, you know that I'm not all in, but this is just idiocracy, like the movie Idiocracy. This is idiocy. One more video. This is crazy because this man who got caught was I believe a sales manager or director of sales, whatever, had a prominent career, probably doing very well. But again, totally was manipulated, bought into the Kool-Aid, the messaging, drank the grape flavor or, the fruit punch flavor that he enjoyed that made him feel good. And here he is, totally easily manipulated for whatever reason, decided that he's going to be some activist hero who feels that he's doing the right thing. And here's this video. This is a TikTok video by, I think, News. I forget the actual name, but just throwing it out there. This one came from TikTok. I think it was at lay.news022. All right, here you go.
This man just threw away his entire career because he wanted to key a Tesla. And of course, he was caught on camera doing it.
No. Okay. I don't know what happened. You didn't key that Tesla? No. Okay.
His name is Jim Pellis, a former regional sales director for Armor Code in Massachusetts. He waited until no one was around.
Okay, a former sales director. So he's not currently, but he was a former. But still, someone who had a career, probably had a decent reputation. Let's continue this.
Casually walked up to the Tesla and, thinking no one would see him, dragged his key across the car's paint, leaving a deep scratch. What he didn't realize was that Tesla's built-in cameras were recording everything. Crystal clear footage. No denying it. It didn't take long for the internet to track him down. His company put out a statement distancing themselves, saying they don't condone vandalism and that this is now in the hands of the authorities. And Jim? He went into full panic mode, deleted his LinkedIn, tried to erase himself from the internet. But it's too late.
Okay, sorry, correction. He's a former director of sales because the company basically let him go. But as of that recording, this report, he was still holding that position. All right, here we go.
This is going to haunt him for the rest of his life. Imagine being a grown adult and doing something this stupid. If you don't like Musk or Tesla, fine. But damaging someone else's car doesn't hurt Elon. It hurts a regular person who worked hard for it. And thanks to Tesla's cameras, he's now facing the consequences of his actions.
And great point there. And I hear that some of these people are being charged as domestic terrorists, which carries, I believe, can carry up to 20 years, which is ridiculous. So you're going to throw your life away because you think that you're doing the right thing for your team by literally thinking you get away with damaging someone else's property that has nothing. Like, these people have no connection to Elon whatsoever. They just like the product. That's it. Doesn't mean they themselves agree with everything Elon does, but Elon's not even the sole owner of Tesla. He's a partner. I mean, he's a majority partner, but still, point's been made. You're hurting somebody over your dislike for one person who's literally done nothing but do his job at the behest of the President of the United States, who has a limited window in which to do his job. It's not a permanent position. He's not giving or have been granted a lifetime position within the White House. He's just been tasked to help uncover fraud. And he's not making decisions on whether or not someone's getting fired or something's getting shut down. He gets the evidence with his team, presents it to Trump and his cabinet. And then from there, hey, if you want to blame anybody for some of these decisions that you really hate, then just blame Trump. But don't blame the person trying to do their job. But I guess your counter argument would be like, well, the people who got fired and lost their government jobs, they were just doing their job too. And yeah, fair enough. But they were doing the job by using my tax dollars to pay for a worthless position that provided no value. So there's that too. Okay, thank you for listening. That's the end of this episode. Again, go to worldofblazepodcast.com, like, share, subscribe, let everybody else know about the podcast, donate to the podcast, etc. Have a great day.
Taste your content, hold your breath and feel the tension. Devils hide behind redemption. Honesty is a one-way gate to hell.